if you have the possibility to do any of these sort of like administrative tasks with a native French person, like as your buddy / spokesperson, do that. I mean, healthcare in France compared to the United States is incredibly affordable. For retirees, we usually recommend the visitor visa, and we actually also recommend the student visa if learning French is of any interest.
Hello and welcome back to Living Well in France. Today I'm sharing part 2 of a 3-part series where I interview the authors of 29 Days to France. Today I'll be talking to Molly and we'll be covering the following: visa types, the best way to learn French, meeting people and integrating, finding your why, how much stuff you should bring with you, and navigating French healthcare. So without any further ado, here's Molly.
A lot of people that watch my channel are over 60. So probably visa advice for retired people might be of interest. Does your book include anything like that at all?
So we have a whole chapter on visas. So generally coming to France, there's like 3 different routes that you can take. So you can be a visitor. So that's probably the best for your audience, for retirees. You can work, so a work visa. Those visas are more difficult to obtain generally. And then the student visa. And there's a couple other categories after that.
Okay, so there's not an upper age limit on being a student.
No.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. The only visa in France that has an age limit is the au pair visa. So you have to be between the ages of 18 and 26.
It was as an au pair that Molly first came to France from the US.
But ultimately, there's a reason why there's an age cap on this visa. It really is meant for much younger people. And I was kind of getting to the point of aging myself out of that visa. And also at that point in my life, I knew I wanted to make a career change. And so that kind of I followed this path of, okay, I want to make a career change. That might mean going back to school. Okay, higher education in France and Europe as a whole, I believe, is so much more affordable than it is in the United States. So there was that kind of like attraction there. And when I decided that I wanted to go back to school, I very quickly realized that in order to do that in the way that I wanted to, I had to take the time to learn French, which I hadn't at that point. Which I'm sure some of your readers would be curious to know about that, how much French you need to speak to actually live in France and live in Paris.
Richard Chambers, he asked the question, how much work did you do on learning the language before you moved here, and what method would you recommend?
So I did not learn the language before moving to France, and I don't recommend doing it that way. I definitely encourage people to study. I think the best method, if you have access to it, would be doing it with a private tutor. If you can find a native French speaker in your area, it could be in person, it could be over Zoom, over video, but I do believe that's the best way. I think these apps like Duolingo and things like that are really fun, and they're really encouraging, and you can, learn vocabulary that way. But I do believe very deeply that to reach a very high level of a language, you need to be interacting with someone who's a native speaker.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more with what Molly's just said about the importance of learning the language. And like Molly said, one-on-one is the best way to go. And that's why this week's video is sponsored by iTalki. I only ever recommend products on this channel that I personally use and find useful, and iTalki is absolutely one of them. iTalki makes it easy to immerse yourself in real conversations and cultural context without ever leaving your home.
It's an online language learning platform where you can book one-on-one lessons with native speaking teachers, totally customized to your needs. You can browse teacher profiles, watch their intro videos, check their ratings, and book lessons at times and prices that work for you. Whether you're just starting out or refining fluency, iTalki helps you build a speaking habit that sticks.
Alors, donc dansant au bal, Jean plante sans grand banc.
Dansant au bal, Jean plante sans grand blanc. Bon.
Parfait, là c'est super.
C'est plus court,
Parfait.
c'est plus staccato, quoi, c'est plus coupé.
Exactement, c'est tout est coupé. Tu sais, je pense que tu as entendu, nous, quand on parle, c'est très plat.
Et on m'a dit une fois qu'un Français, il a la bouche plus fermée qu'un anglophone. C'est vrai?
C'est vrai.
Oui, il faut que je parle comme ça un peu.
Exactement. Nous, quand on parle, souvent les étrangers disent que ce qu'ils entendent, c'est
C'est oui, ok.
Donc c'est vraiment, très souvent, c'est assez plat.
Ouais, d'accord.
Plat et sans vague, et la bouche est très souvent pas très ouverte.
Ouais, d'accord. Ok, on y va. Ok.
Alors, roux tourne, mou doux, ou rouge.
iTalki now also offers iTalki Plus.
This premium AI tool gives you lesson summaries, personalised practice, and progress tracking to help you stay consistent and learn faster. You even get 1 month free trial just for signing up.
Click on the link below in the description to start your language learning journey. If you buy $10 worth of credits, you get $5 free using my exclusive promo code LIVINGWELL. But hurry, because this offer only applies to the first 50 users. Why not try it out for yourself? Talk with a native speaker, build your confidence, and actually enjoy the process. Thanks again to iTalki for sponsoring this video and for supporting passionate language learners everywhere. Now let's get back to the interview with Molly.
If anyone watching is feeling intimidated by that part of moving, if you go to a place like Paris, it is very possible to live there with a very minimal level of French. And then once you are there, you can maybe pursue intensive courses and things like that. And so for our retirees who want to go to France and hope to spend, many, many years there, we often recommend that if they don't speak any French, we especially recommend this, that they do a half a year or maybe even a year of intensive French courses, because that will get them the student visa. And it will also help them learn the language, help them integrate a little bit more, meet new people. It's a really great way to meet people too. We get a lot of questions on how to meet people. And
good online platforms organised for, expats, Anglophones to perhaps meet locals. Is there anything that sort of crosses the boundary? Because I know a lot of people, when they move here, they find it probably quite easy to meet other expats, but not so easy to make friends with the French and integrate into the culture.
That was honestly it was what I wanted so deeply at a certain point, kind of at the point when I decided I was ready to move on from being an au pair, because when I was an au pair and when you go over to France as an au pair, you kind of have this built-in group of friends waiting for you, because you have this whole other group of international au pairs who also speak English. And I met some of my closest friends, in those groups that I'm still very close with today. But I also got to a point where I was starting to feel a little bit frustrated and feeling like I'm stuck in this English-speaking bubble. I'm stuck in this bubble of expats and other international people. And for me, the only thing that was able to help me connect with real French people was A, learning the language, and B, just being patient. French people can be a little bit more closed off, I think, than most Anglophones.
Very true. Very true. Far more reserved at first.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And, just thinking about my husband who is French and my closest friends who are French, it takes a long time to maybe break through that. But once you do, these people are going to be part of your life for your entire life. They're so loving and loyal and giving, but it does take a little while to get there. It does. And I think it's important to be patient. I think it's important to know that it does take time, and you might make friends with some people, and that friendship might not last forever. And it might take a little while for you to find your true people. I didn't really find my true group of French friends until about 4 years in, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Same here. Yeah. It took a while. Yeah. Even when we had our daughter, I thought, oh, it's fine now. I'll speak to lots of French mums outside the school gates. No, didn't work like that. Because we live in quite a small village. They saw me very much as a little bit of a scary outsider. to be wary of, apart from one or two of them who had travelled, who had lived abroad or who had travelled extensively, who were really interested in the fact that there was an English woman outside the school. But it took a long time. But once it happened, those friends are wonderful and they'll always be friends for sure. So patience, I think you're right, is the key, isn't it? Most definitely. In your book, you talk about the importance of knowing your why. I wonder if you've had much feedback from your readers and heard any sort of surprising whys from them. What are the main motivations of some of the Americans that read your book for leaving everything and moving to France?
Yeah, so very briefly before I get into that, I just want to kind of explain why we do talk about the importance of our why so much and why it is so important. So it's something that both myself and my co-authors, just in life in general, it's something that we feel very strongly and deeply about, is just having a why for your life in general, but then for also these things you're pursuing, because that why is going to get you through the tough times when it gets difficult, when it's been 6 or 7 months in France and you still haven't made friends yet and you're homesick and you're frustrated, and, having that why, that very, very clear and strong why to go back to during those tough moments. That's personally what got me through those hard moments. So that's why it was so important for us to include that in our book. One of the most common ones, so everyone's is always a little bit unique and a little bit different and kind of personal to them, but something that we hear a lot from Americans, and it's very unsurprising to me because it was part of my own why, and it's just a desire for a slower, more intentional life, to, kind of pluck ourselves out of the rat race that is so, synonymous with American life. It's sometimes hard to articulate, but I guess the escape from consumerism, escape from capitalism, escape from money being the end-all be-all, a desire to get closer to things like art and culture and literature and music. And
where better to do that than in France? It's so true. It's so true. It's I think, I talk about it all the time, and I think a lot of the people that watch Living Well in France really relate to that about the French and idolise that.
Your channel name says it all. They live well. They really do live well. And it's something that while it can be recreated, I think, in other places, and it can be recreated in some place like the United States, it's not as ingrained in the culture as it is in a place like France. And it's I feel like we give this example quite often, but it's something as simple as like the freedom to have a 1-hour lunch break in France and not, be eating a sandwich in one hand and typing on your computer in the other hand, which is so normalized in the States, and I think in other countries in the world now too. But.
Yeah. The French are very protective of all those rights that they've worked so hard as well to earn and to establish through all their striking and protesting. They've worked really hard for it. It didn't just sort of fall on a plate, and they protect it now. So anyone that comes here, I think, can really benefit from that, for sure.
I agree.
What about some of the misconceptions that people have when they move to France? Do you get feedback from people after they've made the move and perhaps are surprised or maybe even disappointed that life isn't quite how they thought it would be?
I do think there is a lot of ideation of moving to France. Especially in the United States, we do really gravitate towards this very cliche, stereotypical, mostly Parisian idea of France, where, kind of like what I was just saying, like these very leisurely lunches and this and that, and no one's working, and it's all fun, and it's all just like pleasure all the time. And right. And while there is, of course, a certain level of that, people still do, have to work in France. People still have to have jobs, and I feel there's a lot of rhetoric maybe around like French bureaucracy and red tape, and that's pretty true. There is a lot of paperwork that you need to do before you move once you're in France, and if you want to stay in France, there's also a lot of paperwork that you need to do. I think too, another thing that people might feel a little bit surprised about, and it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, how long it can take to make friends with actual French people. I think it's pretty easy to make friends with other expats fairly quickly if you're a social person. I didn't mention like kind of places where you can make friends or find these groups to hang out with, but Meetup is a good one. Facebook groups have a lot of these like expat picnics or things like that. So that's some feedback that we do get from people, like maybe months in, like, do you have any advice for meeting people? Like, where should I be going to meet other people? What should I be doing to meet other French people? And
On va sortir is very good as well. OVS, on va sortir, OVS. I joined that when I first moved up to Normandy because I lived in Cannes for 9 years. And then I met my husband, and he was from Normandy and wanted to move back to Normandy. So I came with him.
Yeah, big change. Normandy.
Yeah, the weather was more what I was used to, much more like England. But yeah, it was, for me, I really wanted to integrate into the local French culture. I didn't want to just meet a lot of more expats up here in Normandy. Yeah. That was really important.
What did you do?
I went on, I could have been lazy and just made friends with my French husband and French family's circle. And obviously I did, to some extent integrate with them. But I remember sort of suggesting to some of the wives of my husband's friends, hey, shall we go out for girls' drinks? Something that I would, do a lot with my English friends or other expat friends. And they sort of seemed a little bit shocked at the suggestion. Like, why would we want to? We're married. We don't need to go out, out looking for a boyfriend, which is kind of what they associated going for drinks was. And I didn't really insist after that. I kind of got the impression that no, that's not the done thing. So I left that, and I see my French husband's friends and their wives, and we have nice sort of barbecues and parties together from time to time. But I don't see them separately. I don't see the women separately. And I made friends on va sortir, OVS. I just put a post saying in French, would love to meet up. Just moved to the region. I'm English, but I want to meet other French people or people that have travelled. And I met some absolutely lovely people. I just wanted girlfriends, really. So lovely girls that all of them had travelled a bit, so they had sort of the different mindset, more of an open mindset to meet somebody who wasn't like from down the road. We went out, and now we go out probably about once a month for a girls' dinner. There's a group of 4 of us that do that, and then I met some other mums after we'd had our daughter. I set up a group called Mummies and Babies for French, or for people that wanted to practice their English whilst their babies played around, over coffee. So that worked really well, and I'm still friends with them now. So I think it's, if you can't find a group in your local area, then just set one up.
I agree. And I think and rather than feeling discouraged that you can't find that group, like you say, just like make the first move yourself. And it's interesting that you mentioning the wanting to have a girls' night and the women kind of being like, that's kind of strange. I do find that female friendships are different in France than they are in I guess, Anglophone countries. But I also think, as you just said, you couldn't find your group, so you went online and you put yourself out there and you made a post. Like, that's the advice that we often give people who come to us asking, for advice on how to make friends. Like I love that you brought up getting people in who wanted to learn English, because I think that's like such a good kind of like hack, I guess, as an expat, because
it's your USP, isn't it? You can offer that.
Right. And also too, I think it's a great way for English speakers to meet French people, like if you do it like inversely, so you get a French tutor that you want to like learn French with. I think that's a great way to meet at least one person, and then you never know what can happen from meeting that one person.
Yeah, you can. I know people that have just set up a language exchange. They'll do a coffee and they'll do half an hour in English and then half an hour in French. So it's beneficial for both of them, and it's free for both of them as well. Just a cup of coffee. So that's a really good way of doing it, and people are really open to that. The French are really quite bad at English. I've been an English teacher here for 20 years and I've still got plenty of work. So yeah, it's really important to learn, I think, to really integrate is to learn French. I would say, like, make that your number one priority.
Yes.
Yeah, people were asking other questions. More of a practical one was shipping recommendations. Do you go into detail in your book about things like that?
We don't, only because we are of the mind of less is more. And that's one thing like that I can share personally. That's one piece of feedback that we get from clients, is that people always regret bringing too much stuff over. It's never the opposite. It's never like, oh, I wish I held on to that one sweater I left behind. You know, it's always, I actually didn't need half of this, and it was so much of a rigmarole to get it all over here. And, you know, we really didn't have to do all of this. It's one of the hardest parts, I think, about moving away, especially if you are moving for, it's more permanent. It's not just this gap year, or it's not just a semester abroad or things like that, is actually going through all of your belongings, figuring out what you're keeping and what you're giving away. We have a chapter on that, on kind of our advice. We have several chapters actually on what to keep and what not to keep. And that can be emotional. That can be one of the more like almost surprisingly emotional parts of moving. I've gotten that as feedback before, like falling up with a client, knowing that they were working on unpacking and then sharing that they, you know, ended up crying because they found some, you know, one of their child's old sweaters or something like that. And it is one of the more emotional parts of moving. We tend to recommend less is more, like the fewer things you can bring, the better. And if you can manage it, just bringing extra luggage is really what we recommend, because these shipping containers are very expensive.
Somebody asked whether a pallet would be a good idea. 4x4x4-ish pallet of stuff to ship. Nothing I'll need immediately, but still will need eventually. It seems like a pallet will be safer than shipping a bunch of random boxes or suitcases. So this sounds like, Lolly G, sounds like she might need to read your chapter on minimising.
Yes, and it's something too, and of course this comes from a place of privilege of being able to go back and forth and you know, moving, and then maybe being able to go back to your home country, you know, 6 months later, and maybe rethink what you have. But something that can be really helpful if you're able to is that comment's very interesting, because they're talking about things that they won't need right away, but they'll need later. Like that sounds like something that would be great, like in a storage unit in your home country, and you just kind of leave it there. And, you know, maybe you go back home after 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, a year, and then you go to said storage unit and look around it and say, do I really need this? And if there are things that people want to hold on to for more like sentimental reasons, we also talk about that in the book. That's a great time to like ask a major favor of, you know, your best friend and say, do you have any room in your basement for me to store a couple things in there? I'm not sure if I want to let it go yet. Stuff like that. So shipping with pallets and containers, if you must do it, it is a great way to get your stuff over there, but it does come at a price.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Goodness,
yeah,
I can imagine it's very expensive. Speaking of money, Sheila Powley asks, is Wise a good choice for money transfers, or do you have any other recommendations? Have you worked with any transfer companies? Do you have any recommendations to share in your book or now?
So I believe we do mention it in the book, and Wise is actually our preferred transfer. That's what I still use to this day. So that's a great one. They have the best rates, I find, and there's a possibility to do like instant transfers with them, which we really, really like. There's other ways of doing it. I know people who use PayPal, but the fees there are quite expensive. I find that Wise has the best conversion rates and also has the best like fee little percentage that they take. So Wise is a great choice.
Do you think do you think it's essential to set up a French bank account? Or,
absolutely.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, I do. Again, it's all a part of it, right? It's all a part of integrating into French life and French culture and French society. And it's wonderful that we live in such digital world, and there's a possibility. I don't think you should like close your bank account in your home country. I don't think you should do that. But I do strongly believe that you need a French bank account, and not just one of these like online bank accounts. Like I think there's a couple that are like based in Germany, and I think there might be another one based in Spain, which those are great too. I think if you're someone who likes to have several different accounts, I think that's a great option. But the French bank account is such a key part of your French administrative life. I mean, you need it to have a cell phone bill. You need it most likely to rent an apartment. Like you need it for so many different things. And in France, it's so normal to pay for things through like a bank wire. And the easiest way to do that is from one French bank account to another French bank account. So not having a French bank account will complicate your life immensely.
Okay. And is it something very complicated to set up?
It used to be much more complicated. Now it is not as complicated. And this is something that this is kind of maybe like a little niche thing, but this is something that I recommend for anything. If you have the possibility to do any of these sort of like administrative tasks with a native French person, like as your buddy / spokesperson, do that. A French person is going to get a better response from another French person, just generally. Even if you're fully bilingual, which is what I've found in my life. And you should also be maybe mindful of the type of the bank you go to. So for our American clients, we usually recommend BNP because they're a big international bank. They have clients all over the world. They're used to working with not only just French people. I personally have my bank account at Crédit Agricole, which is a much smaller bank, which I was fortunate enough to open that bank account way back when I was an au pair, and I just never changed it. I don't know how easy it would be as a foreigner to open an account with them now.
Yeah, well, I worked for them for 5 years, and I used to work for Britline, it's called, for British expats. Okay. So I know that they offer a very good service in English, 100% in English for British expats. So I'll give them a little bit of advertising there.
Yeah, good shout out. I love that. I'll have to keep that in mind because I like to give people like several options. So that's a good one. Okay, great.
They don't deal with American expats, though. It's more complicated because of your tax system, I think, was the main problem.
Okay.
So yeah, but they do have a separate international department that helps with that. So, and all the people that were working there were bilingual. So they really try and offer a very good service in English for expats that need banking, which I'm not sure if BNP offer.
They do. BNP does have, yeah. There's pretty much every single person I've ever interacted with there has spoken English.
That's great.
Yeah. We do have in the back of the book too, we have 2 appendices, and it's for like service providers in Paris. We're living in Paris, so they're very Paris focused. But all of that list of service providers, all of them speak English. which is so nice to have that handy list. Yeah. Especially in the early days when you're not super comfortable with French, or, I mean, even me now, I'm so comfortable with French and I only speak with my husband in French, but there's still certain things I just feel better doing in English.
Yeah, of course. Really important things it's nice to be able to do in your native language, isn't it? For sure. So, you lived in Paris. Did you live in other regions of France at all? Or any of your other co-authors, have they lived in other parts of France? Or is it quite a Paris-centred book?
So the book, other than the appendices, is general for France. I think if you want to move anywhere in France, you would get a lot out of the book. Myself and my co-authors, we've only ever lived, I would call it the Ile-de-France region, because Stephen spent some time in a wonderful, wonderful little village called Moret-sur-Loing, and it's on the Loing River, and it is this very small medieval town, and so Stephen actually escaped there during COVID. So he moved there. He moved there, I believe, end of 2019 or maybe end of 2020, perhaps. Beautiful little town, very, very small, beautiful church, beautiful river. And so he was able to get more of like the small town experience, I would say. I lived in the center of Paris for many years, and then I also lived in 2 different suburbs of Paris. So not in the center, but still on the RER line, the public transportation line. I lived in the south in Cannes, actually, briefly for about 6 weeks. I love it down there. It's beautiful. But I think I've also spent a lot of time outside of the Paris region, thanks to my husband, because he's not originally from Paris.
Like most Parisians.
Yes, yes. But yes, to answer your question, we all lived in the Ile-de-France region. Yeah.
Something a lot of my subscribers, people that watch my channel, are interested in as healthcare here. Can you talk about perhaps how it compares in affordability and quality to the American healthcare system?
Mm-hmm. So affordability, there's no comparison. I mean, healthcare in France compared to the United States is incredibly affordable, even if you don't have insurance, which to my American mind, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around it. And a lot of our clients have a hard time wrapping their minds around that idea. I remember in the very early days when I went over as an au pair, the family I was working for were supposed to set up my insurance for me. And something happened where they hadn't set it up yet or something like that. And I did have to go to the doctor. And they were like, oh, don't worry. Just make sure you get the receipt from it, because then we can send it in to get reimbursed. And I'm kind of like, okay. And I'm expecting to have to pay, first of all, I'm expecting to get a hard time that I don't have insurance, because in the United States, many people won't even treat you unless you have insurance. And so already they were treating me without insurance, and I was like, wow, this is great. And I get up to pay the bill, and I'm expecting at least a couple $100. It was just to see my general physician for something. And they asked for, yes. And they asked for my carte vitale, and I was like, oh, I don't have it. I don't have it. And they're like, oh, okay, well, it's going to be kind of expensive. And I say, okay. And they go, that'll be 25 euros. I wanted to cry. Yeah. And it's funny because a French person would consider that expensive to go see a doctor.
Yeah, we just kind of get used to it and expect everything to be free or almost free.
Yes. So then once I did get my carte vitale, that price went down to, I think it was 5 euros to see my médecin. And then when I got my mutuelle, which I paid, I believe, 40 euros per month for, I wasn't paying anything to go to the doctor. I didn't have to pay anything for any of my prescriptions.
Dental, it's all covered, isn't it?
It's all covered.
It's cheap as well when you're younger. The mutuelle, it gets a lot more expensive for older people. It goes up quite a lot. Just I used to sell health insurance through the bank, so I know that it gets a lot more as you get older. But it's pretty important, I think, to have top-up healthcare in France.
I agree. And we get asked about the quality quite a bit as well. If that's kind of, I think, a misconception, especially in the United States, like these countries that do have universal healthcare, that the quality is lower. And I've never felt that, ever. I've never felt uncomfortable at a doctor. I've never felt like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. I've never had to wait for, 7-8 hours to see someone. My doctor in Paris, I love every single person in their cabinet spoke English, which was great as well. And so the quality is, for me, the same as it is in the United States.
I have heard that, and I have also experienced that the further up the hierarchy in the medical field you go, the less adept at speaking to people in a sort of kind and gentle way some of the surgeons and doctors can be. So just to be aware of that, perhaps. If you have to go and see a specialist, it's probably a very good idea to bring somebody with you who speaks fluent French, because a specialist isn't going to want to try to explain everything in English. Whereas a nurse or perhaps a GP would take more time and perhaps have a little bit more of a humanistic approach. When it gets to the top level, they're excellent at what they do, and they know it, and they have a different attitude. So that's something that a lot of people, I think, have experienced. I don't know if it's the same perhaps the world over. It might be. But when there's also a language barrier, it's something that can be a bit of a shock, especially if you're sick. When you go and you need empathy and kindness, and you need somebody to explain something, take time to explain to you, then going with somebody who speaks French would help a lot.
I agree, and I guess that would be probably the biggest difference, I would say, is like the bedside manner. I think it's an interesting subject, because I think just in general, some Americans can sometimes bristle a bit at the French directness, just because it's so different from how we operate culturally. But so for me, the I guess lack of bedside manner, I would say, I always kind of like what you alluded to. There are these surgeons who know they're very good at what they do, and pair that with the just normal, natural French directness. It doesn't translate into this very, I guess, maybe soft and kind bedside manner that many American doctors and surgeons and things can have. So it's a good point to bring up. So definitely.
But it's not, like you say, it's absolutely not rudeness. It's the way the French are. They're just really honest, which I personally happen to love. It's my favourite thing about them. And they just get to the point, say it how it is. If you want to know what's wrong with you, they'll tell you.
They will. They will not be walking on eggshells.
Yeah. Still, sometimes it's better just to know, isn't it?
And that's why we love them.
Have you got any sort of specific advice for older people that you think they should know before moving to France? So, like I said, a lot of the people that watch my channel have probably got grown-up children, so they're going to be moving away from family. What should they think about?
So this is, again, I always go back to the importance of the why, especially for people who are retired and who have older children, who might even have children themselves. So your why needs to be strong enough to carry you through those times of missing your children and your grandchildren. And I think, too, taking the time to really think about things, taking the time, of course, I wrote my book, so I think it's very helpful, but you don't necessarily need to use my book, but just taking the time to have that reflection on your why, but also what you're hoping to get out of moving to France. I think that's also very important. And it's also I think it's important to be very specific. Like, I think maybe some people have this dream of going to France, and it's like, well, I've always just dreamed of living in Paris, and that's great, and I love that, and I think that's a great jumping off point. That's a great starting point, but you got to dig a little bit deeper, I think, to hopefully make it the best experience it can be. Because if you don't, the difficult times, the times of frustration, that's going to be really hard to get through if you don't have, something really strong to kind of lean on during those hard times.
Yeah, family so far away.
Yes.
That's a big one, I think, for a lot of people that have chosen to live in a different country. You have to really think about the fact that your family is going to be far away. You're going to miss out on, those key events. You can't you might be able to keep flying across from one country to another, but it's pretty unusual to be able to do that. Speaking of travel budgets and things, what would you say was the kind of average budget necessary for living in France on a day-to-day basis? How much do how much do you need to live in France?
It's something that we talk about often. Something that we get asked about often is the cost of living, and it's a bit of a delicate subject at times, I feel, because I believe, living in France and living in the United States, I believe that the cost of living in France is much lower. And I feel comfortable saying that blanket statement. But digging a little bit deeper into that, the cost of living is lower, but the average French salary is lower compared to someplace like the United States. And so that's important to point out. The privilege that a lot of our clients have, especially our older retirees, is they've worked very hard their entire lives, and they have, either their pension or their retirement fund to live off of, and that money will get you much farther in France than it will in the United States. So for the visitor visa, a key part of that is showing that you can support yourself financially. But the minimum requirements in France, especially compared to, how much it costs to live in the United States, are very, very minimal. Very, very, very minimal. The minimum wage in France is, I think, 1,800 euros. And there are people who are able to live on that pretty comfortably.
I do.
And when I say that to other Americans, they have, it's kind of like the healthcare. They have a hard time kind of wrapping their head around that idea. But because France is a socialist country, there's many more things that are available at a much more affordable cost than they are in the United States. And you are able to get by on, minimum wage, or maybe just even a little bit above minimum wage. So that's something that I think is really exciting for our clients, like our retired clients, that they can, they've worked so hard and now they can really enjoy. So I would say just general blanket statement, especially if you're coming from a country like the United States, you will find the cost of living in France to be much, much, much lower.
Good news.
Yeah.
How do you actually get the carte vitale when you've got your visa? How do you get it? Because once you've got your carte vitale, about 70% of your healthcare is covered, isn't it? And then the extra 30% is covered by your top-up insurance.
Yes.
But how do you, as an American, get your carte vitale? What's the way to get it?
Yes. So the timeline of getting it can depend, like so many different things with French administration. So normally when you are an American, you get approved for your visa when you're already in the United States. You get said visa, you get on the plane, you move to France. And then within the first 3 months of living in France, you have to go online, and it's literally, I think it's like france-visas.gouv, and there's a big button and it says register your visa. And so as soon as you do that, you have to do that within the first 3 months of moving over. As soon as you do that, you're basically signaling to the French authorities that you have received your visa, you are actually living in France, and you are now, a member of French society. And then from there, you can go to amelie.fr, so like AMELIE.fr, and you just sign up for the carte vitale with, I believe you have to give your visa number, you have to give all like this information about your identity, and then they, look into all of it to make sure that everything is matching up with what is in, the immigration authority, all the information that they have, and then they'll send you the carte vitale.
So, Molly, you've written a book, you've co-authored a book called 29 Days to France. Mm-hmm. Tell me what it's about, and then tell me what inspired you to write it.
Sure. So I have a brand new copy right next to me, so I figured I'd hold it up for everyone. So it's called 29 Days to France. Again, my name is Molly, and I am one of 3 of co-authors who wrote the book. So it is essentially a guidebook for Americans. It's directed towards Americans, but now with Brexit, I think people from the UK can also benefit from it as well. Basically, anyone who needs to get a visa to come and live in France. And it's exactly what it sounds like. So 29 Days to France. It's a workbook that you can work through within 29 days to follow the I guess, journey, you could call it, from before you move to France, the during, so what you should be thinking about while you're there, and then the after, so deciding if you want to continue to live in France, if you're ready to go back to your home country. And each chapter, if you will, is a day. And each day has a little note on a specific topic. So one of the topics is how to set up a bank account or how to set up a cell phone plan. And then on the other side of the page is a little exercise that we give to kind of keep the mental juices flowing. So for example, for the bank account and cell phone plan, I believe the exercise is, what do you absolutely need in a French bank account and how can you find that? And then we give plenty of room for people to actually write inside the book. So it's a very hands-on sort of workbook style. Here is how to move to France from your home country.
Okay, I think that might be really interesting to people that watch my channel.
That was the end of part 2 of my 3-part series with Molly and Stephen. If you've not already listened to part 1, I'll link it below. In the last episode of this series, I'll be talking to both Molly and Stephen about the main differences between US and French healthcare, how to choose the best region for you in France, cheese, a very important French subject, and exactly how good does your French need to be when you move here. For those of you who would like to incorporate a little bit more of the French lifestyle into your day-to-day, I've created a free PDF called Frenchify Your Life, designed to put on your kitchen wall and inspire you every day to live a little bit more of a French lifestyle. If you would like your free copy, just click on the link below in the description and I'll send it to you. If you haven't already done so, be sure to hit the bell and subscribe. Until next time, à bientôt!